We are continuing in our study in the Gospel of John. John chapter 19, just 2 verses. Verse 12 and verse 13. Title might be No Friend of Caesar. This is a crucial turning point in the trial before Pilate. Up until this point, the reader might have thought that the Lord Jesus would be freed. But here in these 2 verses, we see that the Jewish leaders have finally succeeded in persuading Pilate to have the Lord Jesus crucified. Again, this paragraph seems to end after verse 18, but there are so many interesting details in these verses that it would be too long a video to cover the whole paragraph, which would be verses 12 through 18. So for the sake of time, this paragraph is broken into 3 videos, one on verses 12 and 13, one on verses 14 through 16a, and one on verses 16b through 18. Chapter 19, verse 12. From then on, Pilate was trying to release him, but the Jews were shouting, saying, "If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar." Everyone making himself a king opposes Caesar. The Greek expression could mean from then on, as translated just now, or it could mean because of this. I only found one translation that takes that second option, translates it as a result. Many English translations take the first option, which I just used just now, from then on. One problem with the as a result or because of this translation is that it's not quite exactly clear what that cause would be. The verb was trying is in the imperfect tense, ezete from zeteo, indicating repeated effort. In fact, it might have seemed like Jesus was not going to be crucified. The political accusation of sedition has failed because it was ridiculous, and the religious accusation of him making himself to be a son of God has failed because it made superstitious Pilate more afraid. But there was one more approach they could take. Pilate's emperor, Tiberius Caesar, was a suspicious and cruel man. We cannot be sure whether the events of John 12 through 21 took place in AD 30 or AD 33. But on 18 October of AD 31, Tiberius Caesar turned on his most trusted friend and advisor, Aelius Sejanus, who had gained great power in Rome. Tiberius feared that Sejanus was plotting against him, and so Tiberius had Sejanus and many of his friends executed. This is particularly interesting for us as we study about Pilate's action with Jesus, because Sejanus was Pilate's sponsor before Tiberius. Pilate owed Sejanus a lot, so Pilate could easily have been among those many friends of Sejanus that were on that list to be executed. Well, according to history, he wasn't executed, but he knew to be afraid. Again, those executions happened in 31 AD, perhaps before or perhaps after these events. Either way, Pilate knew that his boss, the emperor, was again a suspicious and a cruel man. He didn't hesitate to have people executed if he thought they might endanger him. Pilate was already the subject of several negative reports to Tiberius, and he certainly did not want anybody, even these troublesome Jews, saying to Tiberius Caesar that he was no friend of Caesar. By the year 70 AD, the expression friend of Caesar had become a technical term, almost like a rank or a special society in Rome. But actually, it's not known whether it had that precise technical meaning at this time. Maybe it just meant you're no friend of Caesar, or maybe it meant you're not one of those, that elite group called friends of Caesar. We don't know. Chapter 19, verse 13. So Pilate, hearing these words, brought out Jesus and sat on the official platform in the place called Stone Pavement, and in the language of the Hebrews, Gabbatha. Pilate's fear of the Emperor Tiberius was stronger than his fear of his prisoner. The Jews succeeded in defeating Pilate. This is the turning point in the trial. The official platform is the bema. That's our Greek word for this, the bema. It was a raised platform. You can see the bema in Corinth, in ancient Corinth. The bema was a raised platform, and upon the bema, the ruler would make official pronouncements. And so Pilate sat on that bema because the verdict that he was about to announce was official. That very same bema is mentioned in Matthew 27:19. Various other Roman bema are mentioned in Acts 12:21, 18:12, 18:16 and 17, and chapter 25:6, 10, and 17. The bema of Christ is mentioned in Romans 14:10. There is a textual problem in that verse. A few manuscripts say it is the bema of God. The best manuscripts, then the most of the manuscripts say the bema of Christ. And see also the bema of Christ in 2 Corinthians 5:10. The word is also used in Acts 7:5, where it has the rather different meaning of step, as in a step that a person takes with his foot. Concerning the stone pavement, this word, lithostrotos, can mean a place or road paved with stone, or it can mean a mosaic. Now, there is a 300 square meter paved area in the Antonia fortress, which could have been the site, but it is not known if this took place there. Now, the words, in the language of the Hebrews. This is an interesting expression. It's a tricky expression. The Greek word is Hebraisti. It can very nicely be translated in the language of the Hebrews, but it's not Hebrew here. At that time, the everyday language of the Hebrews was Aramaic. And so this word, Hebraisti, is used 6 times in the New Testament, in John 5:2, John 19:13, John 19:17, John 19:20, and then twice in Revelation 9:11, and Revelation 16:16. In the Gospel of John, the expression, the word Hebraisti, always refers to Aramaic, but in the book of Revelation, it seems to refer to the Hebrew language. Both Aramaic and Hebrew are Semitic languages. They're similar. A well-known illustration of how similar they are would be the Hebrew and Aramaic word Ab. It means father in both languages. We all know Ab because Abba, which is literally the father, is the Aramaic word for father. The meaning of the word Gabbatha is uncertain, but it is almost certainly an Aramaic word because of the ending a, which is the definite article in Aramaic. We cannot assume that the word Gabbatha means stone pavement, because even though the name of the place in Greek is stone pavement, that doesn't mean that the name of that place in Aramaic also means stone pavement. The Romans might have had one name for the place and the Jews a completely different name for the same place. The threat, "You're no friend of Caesar," was a frightening threat for Pilate, because if you betray Caesar, he will take you out and have you executed. So Pilate was afraid of Caesar. So here in these 2 verses, we see this crucial turning point in the trial. Up to this point, you might have thought that maybe Pilate will just say, "The man's innocent. I'm letting him go." But in these two verses, we see that the Jewish leaders' threat that Pilate was no friend of Caesar persuades Pilate to have the Lord Jesus crucified.